Let's stay in Manchester and let's go to Manchester United. Now, where do we start with United, right? Because I was having this conversation with a few different people over the last couple of weeks, and that, of course, regarding the sale of Cristiano or the termination of Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, of course, you don't get any money directly for him. You don't get a transfer fee or what have you. But what you do get is £500,000 a week off the wage bill, which is quite a lot of money. And what you can do with that is that arguably you can spend that on 2 to 3 pretty good players. I wouldn't say world-class players, but 2 to 3 pretty good players. Now, when we look at the profile that United need, let's go through their squad. I think goalkeeper, once again, is a position where they could potentially strengthen, but I don't think it's a necessity right now. Left back, I think they're fine for now. Centre back, same. Right back, I do think that they do need a right back. I do think that they do need a right back, especially considering Diogo Dalot is carrying a heavy burden on his shoulders, especially in the back half of this season. I think that's an area where they're going to strengthen, look to bring in a bona fide superstar in that position. I don't think it's going to be in the January period, though. I think they can get away with having Wan-Bissaka and Dalot for the next 4 or 5 months. Midfield, I do think they need a midfielder. I don't think Christian Eriksen is the answer, but once again, I think they can get away with it for another 6 months. And the front line behind the striker, I think is okay once again, and it's the striker position which I've landed on. Now, of course, I've woken up to the news that Manchester United are very interested in Wout Weghorst, and Erik ten Hag sees Wout Weghorst as a necessity. He thinks that he ticks all the boxes for his Manchester United side and for his project, and that I don't necessarily entirely disagree with. Because, of course, when you look at the way that Ten Hag played with his Ajax team, it was built off, especially in his last season, it was built off Sebastian Haller, who is in a very similar mold to Weghorst. A big striker, good in the air, can hold the ball up whilst also being capable with the ball at his feet. So I agree in a sense that the profile of player for the system is similar enough for it to be a good signing. But when I look at Weghorst, I just think, is he a difference maker? Is he a player that can come in and make a difference, both off the bench and starting? He isn't versatile. He can't play anywhere other than a striker position, so he is not malleable in any sense. I think it's an okay signing, and he'll, of course, come on a cheap, so that, of course, is not an issue. Of course, he has that relationship, that Dutch relationship with the coach, so that should come in and do him a world of good. But I was looking at a couple of players that could come in for United and offer a little bit in terms of I wouldn't say maybe difference, but versatility whilst also having an impact. And when you look at this United team, they've gone with Martial, Rashford up front. Apart from that, they don't really have any other players who can do that job to a pretty good level. When we look at their most recent game against Everton in the Cup, they started with Martial up front. When we look at their game against Bournemouth, they started with Martial again. When we look at their game against Wolves, they started with Martial again. When we look at their game against Forest, they started with Martial. He scored 1 goal in those 4 games, right? That game came against Forest, so he hasn't scored in his last 3 games. And even in the AFL Cup game after or before that, Martial started. So since they've returned from the World Cup, they've started Martial up front. He scored 2 goals in 5 games, and hasn't really set the world alight. So what Martial is a number 9 that has kind of been pushed in and out of position that has knocked his confidence and that has put him in a mindset of, he kind of needs to do everything, or he feels like he needs to do everything in order to prove himself. So what you need is a player who can come in, who's on a good run of form for his club, who can carry that confidence with him, can move into that striker position, can offer both very good technical ability, who can carry the ball and you can progress the ball forward, whilst also being a very, very good finisher. Now, my eyes immediately went to a couple of people, but I landed on one man who has been floated around for quite a while. His contract is running up in the summer, so he's got 6 months left on his contract, and I don't think he's going to be renewing it anytime soon. I'm of course talking about the Borussia Mönchengladbach player Marcus Thuram. Now, he, of course, was given the responsibility by Didier Deschamps of coming in to that World Cup side, that World Cup final side, I should say, in the first half where he made two changes, and he performed very well in that final. I think there's a reason why Didier Deschamps chose to trust. I think there's a reason why Deschamps chose to trust Thuram in that scenario, because he was on a fantastic spell of form for Borussia Mönchengladbach prior, and he's continued that. He's got 10 goals and 3 assists from 15 games in the league. He's 25 years old, so he's still got some time to grow and can change and can adapt to a Ten Hag system. He's a striker by trade, if you want to call him that, but he can also float off the left-hand side. He's a good poacher in the box. He's a pretty good finisher, but he can also move out to the left and carry the ball forward, use his physicality, use his pace to influence in the final third that way. He's not just a goal scorer. He can create as well, and I think he's a pretty good player to come into this side. He can come into this side straight away and have an instant impact. If we go and let's take a look at his FB ref. Let's take a look at his FB ref now. So we haven't touched on FB ref in quite a while, but once again, like I said, take these with a grain of salt, because they of course are per 90 stats taken over the last calendar year, so not league season, the whole calendar year. But once again, take these stats with a grain of salt, of course. But what we can see here is we can see a very good finisher. 0.61 non-penalty expected goals per 90, ranking in the 96th percentile. Non-penalty expected goals plus expected assists, ranking in the 70, or 0.74 per 90, ranking in the 93rd percentile. Now, what that means is he has impact, or he at least shows that he could have impact, which is something that United need. They just need signs of, because what United's season has been, and this is something which I wanted to touch on when I spoke about Thuram. What United's season has been, and what he was potentially always going to be, was almost like a progression season, but a promise-filled season. There's promise, or there's glimpses of this player playing well. There's glimpses of this system playing well, and that is what a player like Thuram can come into and can continue providing those glimpses whilst also penetrating the scoreboard in a sense, and also having an impact. He's one of those players that will just slot into this system, keep doing what the rest of the team are doing, whilst also having an actual tangible impact on the scoreboard, because that's what he's done for his club side already so far. Like I said, I think it was 15 goal contributions in 13 games. No, 13 goal contributions in 15 games. So he's come in, he's had a very good season for his club, and he will come in and just be a very, very good presence, both in the box and whilst carrying the ball. So we look at those non-penalty expected goals, whatever. Those stats are great. That shows that he's a very good finisher, that he gets into the right areas to get good high percentage chances at goal. He gets into those good positions, which is a great start. However, what my mind was immediately attracted to was that 1.71 dribbles completed per 90, which ranks in the 94th percentile. This is in comparison to other forwards in the league. Now, the way FB Ref, I think this is a very interesting stat, and it's something which you need to have caveated in a sense. What FB Ref categorizes as a forward is strikers and centre forwards. So the way that FB Ref kind of divide positions is through fullbacks, centre backs, midfielders as a whole, attacking mids / wingers, and forwards. So he's been compared to other strikers in the world, and in the top 5 leagues, I should say, and he ranks in the 94th percentile for dribbles completed. This also takes into account forwards that are like wingers that play striker. So if I'm not mistaken, I think someone like a Sadio Mane or like a Mohamed Salah are categorized, or could be categorized, as forwards. Marcus Thuram, of course a slightly different player to both of them. They both play all three of them play in a pretty similar way in terms of they're very direct. But the fact that he can have 1.71 dribbles completed per 90 as a forward, and that ranking very high, shows that he has the ability to, whilst also playing off the left. Now I probably should have checked this before, but let's look at where he's last been played in some of his games, right? Because this is going to be very interesting to see, because the way United obviously play is fluid. It's very, you play up front, but you also drift out onto the left. You play on the left, but you make runs inside and you play up front. So what Thuram offers is can do both of them. He can start up front and drift out to the left, but he can start on the left and make plays and make runs into the final third and penetrate the 18-yard box. He's a very good dribbler, like we just said. He's a very good dribbler, like we just said. He's a very good goal scorer, like we've just said. He creates high percentage chances for himself, and he takes them more often than not. So and he can also create high percentage chances as well. He's a player that can come into this United side and just give them that extra 0.7 goals a game, which will take them and which will transform these 1-1 draws away at Crystal Palace into a 2-1 win. He's that type of player, which is something that this United side, in a position of transition where results aren't the only thing, results aren't the most important thing that matters, but it certainly matters. They need to get results because they need to get into Europe. They probably need to get into the Champions League to attract these high-quality players that Ten Hag will want to complete the rebuild with. Thuram can come into this side. He's still only 25. You'll get him either on a cheap in January because his contract only has 6 months to go. You'll either get him on a cheap in January or you'll get him for free in the summer. He'll come in, give you that 0.7 goals a game, more than what you already have, and we'll just get you across the line in these games to get you those results, to push you up the ladder, to push you up the league table, and to push you back to where you want to be. If we bring up his average positions here, this shows quite an interesting way of the way he goes about things, right? Because he, like I said, that left half space is where he likes to do most of his work deep, but then he goes into the box and occupies those central areas to get those shots off, to get those high percentage chances off. When we look at the way United play, oh, but that's not it. There we go, that's it. The stream that confused me for a second. When we look at the way United play, and when we look at the assets that United have, their main forward asset, in my opinion, is Anthony. Anthony on that right-hand side is their main forward asset. The way you get the best out of Anthony is by giving him loads of space to be one-on-one and isolate him with his defender, because he's incredibly quick, incredibly agile, has got brilliant technical ability, and can dribble past players for days. That's where he does his best work. So what you have with Thuram is you have a very physical, dominant presence on the left-hand side who will attract defenders to him and will drag defenders across, because not only does he have the ability to make those third-man runs into the box and impact in the final third and impact in the 18-yard box, but it can also collect the ball from deep and drive at the opposition. This creates a double-edged sword of threats that can twist the defense and can make them think about two things, which leaves Anthony wide open on the other side because they're so focused on Thuram on the left. Because he's so dominant in two areas of the pitch, it will give Anthony a lot of space to do his best work. I think these two can complement each other brilliantly. Not necessarily as a winger partnership, but if Thuram plays up front and can drift out to the left and allow Marcus Rashford to come inside and get those runs in behind, isolate the fullback on that side and get those runs in behind, then that will give space for Anthony on the right-hand side to do the business. That, of course, gives freedom to Bruno Fernandes because defenders are being dragged all over the place because they have to make sure that Anthony's covered, whilst also marking the run of Marcus Rashford, who's making that late running behind the defence, whilst also picking up Thuram, because if he picks up the ball and drives at the defence, he's very difficult to stop. It will be a very, very dangerous front three if Thuram can be put into this United side and he can continue on the form that he's currently producing for his club side in Germany. I think it would be a very, very shrewd business decision to get Thuram, and because he's got 6 months left on his deal, I think it could be something that United need to look at. I think it's something that United can look at and can really kind of take off their potential top four rivals in a sense, and give them that point of difference. I just think Marcus Thuram is a player that that can really be a difference if you bring up his FB ref once again. You can just see all the points backed up by the stats there. Touches in the attacking penalty area as well, 6.36. So he's able to get himself into good positions to receive the ball both at feet, whilst also dropping in and collecting the ball as well. So I think Marcus Thuram is a player that United should definitely be looking at. Definitely be looking at, because it would be a player that everyone kind of expects to take that next level because of what we saw at the World Cup, but hasn't had that ability to take that next level. And I think going to this United side under Ten Hag is definitely that chance for him to take that next level, or to elevate himself to the next level and really take that game, and progress his game and help United get back to the Champions League, where they should be and potentially are on a collision course with for next season. So yeah, I hope that cleared. I hope that like made sense in terms of what I think Thuram can offer, because the way Ten Hag wants to play is quite nuanced. It's quite nuanced. So you need intelligent players, and I think Thuram, whilst Thuram is the reincarnation of Andreas Iniesta, I think he's an intelligent enough player to kind of to understand what Ten Hag wants, and to kind of adapt himself to play that way. To kind of understand the way that Ten Hag wants to play. I feel like Thuram can do that in a sense, and can do that quite well. So we'll go Marcus Thuram.